This half hour, we're going to bring back the issue we've been following at some length, and maybe you have been too. The panhandling issue being discussed by the city of Battle Creek. As you know, there was a vote taken this week at the city commission meeting. That would be one of two that would potentially put this ordinance in place, two of them actually. Commissioner Kate Flores is with us this morning. She is one of a few who voted against this at the time of the vote, which did pass 5-4 this week. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning.
Thank you for the time today. So we've talked at length with several folks who have had a notion for passing this, but we haven't talked really at length with someone like you who says, I'm not into that. And some of that just needed time to come to fruition for us to realize who was in favor and who's against. So here you are today, and we appreciate the time you're giving us. What bothers you about this?
Well, let me start, Richard, by saying thanks for this opportunity. I actually think it's really important that the whole community is engaging in public dialogue about this. So first of all, I really appreciate the opportunity. So in this process, I have heard legitimate concerns, some illegitimate concerns, and some that are simply already covered under existing law.
Right.
So I'm not actually completely opposed to any regulation on the issue. And I have actually consistently heard from diverse sources. I sought out beyond our workshops many diverse sources and folks. So I have heard that some limitations around some behaviors may actually be appropriate. And I've done a lot of work and analysis of those. And actually, the people of Battle Creek should be happy about that, because one iteration of these ordinances actually inadvertently went as far as banning trick-or-treating after sunset.
Oh, my goodness.
That's one thing in the process that I pointed out and got addressed. So trick-or-treating has been saved. So,
okay.
So I'm actually, in general, I've been in a very exploratory place and really trying to understand and hear. And I voted no because I'm not there yet, and I don't think these ordinances are there yet. And for them to be there, I need, four things to be in place.
Okay.
First, I need to be confident that this is not about biases or stereotypes or just easing people's discomfort with being exposed to poverty and homelessness. And it needs to be based on the innate dignity of all people. I actually feel quite confident about that from the perspective of staff in our police department. They've taken steps in the process to really demonstrate that. And if it passes, it actually will give me some comfort that they're the ones that will be implementing it. Overall, though, I can't say that I'm confident about this for everyone.
I think, though, what you've said is that if the right verbiage was in play here, you would be.
Yes. And, my other point is I think it's really important that we're not using only policing to solve a complex social problem. Even our chief of police has said policing is a Band-Aid. So I also believe we need to be looking, and we should have been looking in this process at more comprehensive solutions and options for how to address this. There are lots of examples of what other cities have done, and those things at this point, as a commission, we haven't looked at those. So that's sort of that's my second point. My third point is we have not even yet clearly defined the issues, understood the root causes, or really analyzed what strategies would be effective. Plain and simple, that work has not been done. This jumped in immediately at a place of solution. The first workshop, we talked only about proposed solutions. The problems, and specifically what those are and what data we have to back those up, it's not there yet. We do not have that information yet. So I'm not comfortable with that. What I support and what I said at the meeting that I support, is taking the time to do this right. I believe that really understanding issues, looking at all of our options, that's how good policy gets made. And so that's what I support. I support the creation of a task force with diverse stakeholders on board that can really dig into these issues, better understand them, and then, present a set of recommendations with a variety of solutions. An ordinance, this might be one. This really might be one. And so this is one thing that I think, regardless if this passes or not, and if, all indications at this point is that it will pass, I still think that that's a value for us as a community.
Battle Creek City Commissioner Kate Flores is here. We'll pick up where we leave off in just a moment on WBCK. We're here with Battle Creek City Commissioner Kate Flores. We're talking about the panhandling issue. So you've said we just need to make sure we understand all of this, right? And so do you feel that the commission has done enough of that?
No, I don't think that we've done the due diligence almost whatsoever. This process, we jumped in already, we jumped in at the solution stage. We jumped in reviewing draft ordinances. We skipped pretty much over a real deep understanding of what are the problems, because people need to understand this is not about just regulating people who ask for money on the streets. We can't do that. This has to apply to everybody. We're regulating how, when, and where people can ask for help. So we have to do that very carefully and really understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, and make sure it's as narrow and tailored as possible. And again, in my view, looking more comprehensively of how do we address some of the root issues.
It seems that this became fueled by what I've heard described as a segment of the panhandling population, if you will. Maybe that's too strong a word, but a segment of it that is aggressive. They're transient. They sort of come out of the shadows and push, and not literally, but figuratively push. And if you give them change or you give them food, they throw that away. They want cash. And so that seemed to infer that there was an uptick in urgency about this, because what we're used to is something milder than that this seemed as though it might be more threatening. Yet it seems that the verbiage in the ordinances that's come to us now is more broad than that. Would you say that's true?
I actually think the city staff has done, over this process, we've seen it narrow consistently. We started out very broad. We started out wanting to ban all panhandling, peaceful or not, in downtown. So that's actually slowly narrowed. The police chief does have some, crime stats. The problem with those, and relying solely on those for this discussion and to say we have stats showing there's an issue, is that they're not specific to panhandling. Now, we can guess that some of those are, and we don't have data from how many police calls, like how many of those actually then were instances of aggressiveness. Now, there has been an uptick specifically. There's been a specific issue at City Hall, with folks. And just in these last few weeks, actually, I've been having conversations with members of the staff and board at the Haven, our local shelter, who runs an adult foster care home that these folks are actually members of. They live in. Just through increased communication, and some other, instances, that just happened on their own. At the moment, it looks like, some good progress has already been made without a need to go here. I hear diverse things about who's the problem. On one hand, our chief of police has said that there's a new crop of aggressive folks. But when I talk to other people on the streets and our homeless service providers, they say these are some of the folks that we do already know, and they're doing things like, knocking on, in parking lots, knocking on people's windows or approaching them, getting in and out of their vehicle. So again, I just don't think we're there yet in being clear of what exactly the problem. And if it's just a handful of people, what is the best intervention and what actually is going on there? And I just think we have to understand those things first before we create these ordinances that apply to everybody.
Kate Flores is here, Battle Creek City Commissioner. We're talking about the issue of panhandling, and we'll continue in just a minute here. We're here with Kate Flores, Battle Creek City Commissioner. A few more minutes on the panhandling issue. So it is kind of interesting. We talked with the city manager, the city attorney, I should say, Jill Steele, and we also talked with an attorney who's just, observing this situation. And the city attorney says there's precedent out there. It's constitutional. This will stand up. The other attorney with whom we spoke said, depends on how broadly written this is. What's your comfort level with all that?
So I've heard also from numerous attorneys that I trust, including our city attorney, and they've done a lot of work on this. They've done a lot of research, and my respects, for our city attorney's office. And I've heard from other attorneys that I trust that really question still the constitutionality of this. My personal view on that right now is if we need to understand again who we're talking about. If we're talking about a handful of people, is it worth the taxpayer resources to possibly defend an expensive lawsuit over this issue? Or could there be other ways? I don't think we've explored that enough, and that's a concern of mine.
So here we are now. A 5-4 vote has advanced this. A vote similar in a few weeks could put this on the books now. Where is the commission, as far as you see it, in terms of sorting out the fact-finding you think needs to be done here still?
What was discussed at the meeting on Tuesday, my expectation is I am not foreseeing much difference in the vote. I don't know. You never know. Yet everyone did, or at least the most seemed that they thought looking at comprehensive solutions could still be good. So I think that there still would be support for the idea of let's do a task force and let's still dig in a little bit more deeply and see if there are other solutions that we could be looking at. So it seemed like for the folks that were supportive, they would also be supportive of that. So we'll see.
As you do your own fact-finding, and you mentioned you talked to the Haven and I presume the Share Center and others, do you feel that there's a sense that we're doing all we can do to try and address the root causes of why folks are out there asking for money on the street anyway?
No, because I don't think we haven't defined that. We don't fully know that yet. And there's still, competing stories of what those are. Again, in the process, I have talked to a lot of folks. I've met with 30 or 40 folks down at the Share Center, to talk with people on the ground. And even they said, there might be some limitations that are appropriate, but they have a lot of the same concerns, actually, that I've had. And they've expressed other things, and expressed, we need access to shade and water and a phone. There's other things, again, that I think, for us, I think the commission needs to have a broader understanding of this issue. There is a separation and a difference between panhandling and homelessness, yet those do overlap in a lot of ways. Most folks who panhandle will or have been homeless at some point in their lives. But a lot of the folks that are homeless or in poverty are worried about how this is promoting negative stereotypes and can negatively impact them.
Right.
So I've also discussed the idea, of a task force with our local homeless coalition, which represents, pretty much all of our service providers. And there's broad support, for really looking more deeply and making sure that we're understanding this issue, before really jumping in.
Is there a concern you've heard expressed that there could be intertwined in the complexity of all of this, some panhandlers out there who are not homeless but present themselves as such?
My understanding is that's very likely the case for possibly many, if not most of them. The thing is, this ordinance actually, it's a pending question I have with our city attorney. It doesn't actually address fraud. We could have addressed fraud. Other ordinances I've seen in this process, I've reviewed, 5-6 ordinances from other city. Ours doesn't actually distinguish and specifically give more tools to look into fraud. So that's a question that I still have remaining. Sure,
there could be maybe a part of this ordinance that says if you're not as you represent yourself, that could be an issue here, too, that could be addressed.
And people have raised an issue, is there human trafficking going on? And it's possible. It's possible, that there's some situations going on, where panhandlers are also being victimized. We don't know yet.
Wow. Boy, this is far from over, we presume. Well, we appreciate the points that you've made and the time you've given us today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Battle Creek City Commissioner Kate Flores on WBCK.